Hello, Miss Nicole.
We're gonna wait a couple minutes and get a couple more folks in here. Hope everyone had a nice weekend. Okay, so it looks like we are missing Laura. We're missing Dylan, who I'm a little concerned about. Novaya. Maybe she'll show up. She emailed me earlier. And Deontay. I hate the on Power School, everybody's alphabetized according to their last name. But when you come into Zoom, you're alphabetized according to your first name. It would be so much easier if it was all one or the other. But oh well. Okay. So I'm going to, I'll eventually turn on my my computer's on. I'll eventually turn on my camera, but I'm about to share my screen with you anyway. So today could potentially be sort of a shorter class. We'll see. It just depends on how long a couple things take. But the first thing we're going to do, we have looked over the last couple of weeks at diction, detail, and imagery. And now we're about to move on to syntax, which I think can be the most complicated one. Oh, there's Novaya. Awesome. Let me change that attendance before I forget. Syntax can be the toughest one just because it's not a thing that we think about a whole lot. We're always using syntax and making syntactical choices, but we just don't think about it. And syntax can be anything from basically syntax just means the arrangement of words in a sentence. And so we could be talking about like, does the most important part of the sentence come first or last? Nevia, we just got started, by the way. I'm just about to do the first thing with you guys. I was talking about how we have gone over diction, detail, and imagery, but now we're moving on to syntax. And so syntax can be in reference to like sentence length. It can be in reference to one example that I like to use is Yoda, because when Yoda talks, he does like inverted syntax. He doesn't usually say like subject, verb, object. He'll do like verb, subject, object or something. And sometimes it has to do with like if your sentences are simple or if they're complex or anything like that. So we're going to look at this paragraph real quickly. This should not take very long. I'll share my screen with you. And this is a passage from Virginia Woolf, How Should One Read a Book? Which I haven't ever read How Should One Read a Book before, but I feel like you can kind of tell what it's about from the title. Virginia Woolf is a very famous writer from the 20s and teens. And let's look at these questions before we actually read the passage. So the first one says she uses a variety of sentence types in this selection. Among them is the exclamatory sentence, which just means it ends in an exclamation point. So keep your eyes out so that we can identify which one is the exclamatory sentence and explain its effect. Why does she choose to use an exclamation point there? And then the second thing is pay attention to sentence length. Is each sentence short, medium, or long? And how is the meaning of the passage reinforced and clarified by sentence length? Why do you think she chooses to do different sentence lengths if she does? If she doesn't, do you think that they're all short or are they all long, and why? And again, that's one of the reasons that I think syntax can be a difficult thing, because we don't usually think about why we're making sentences the length we are. We're usually just thinking like, okay, my thought is over, I'm going to put a period here. But some writers are known for very short sentences. Ernest Hemingway is one, and he's somebody we'll look at later in the year. But he is widely known for his very short, simple sentences. Whereas someone from around the same time as him, William Faulkner, he is known for very complex, convoluted sentences that go on and on and on. And it's just about style and why someone chooses to do it that way. And I mean, this book that we're looking at stuff out of is called Voice Lessons. So we're really trying to figure out what makes up a writer's voice, and syntax is part of that. Okay, so the little passage here: the impact of poetry is so hard and direct that for the moment there is no other sensation except that of the poem itself. What profound depths we visit then, how sudden and complete is our immersion. There is nothing here to catch hold of, nothing to stay us in our flight. The poet is always our contemporary. Our being for the moment is centered and constricted, as in any violent shock of personal emotion. So before we get to this first question, the thing that I noticed when reading that was the differences in punctuation, which, yeah, we're not focusing on punctuation, we're focusing on syntax, but sometimes punctuation can affect syntax. So for instance, we've got this dash here. So there's like a sudden break in this sentence. Then we have a semicolon rather than a period or a comma and conjunction. And then here we have an ellipses. So she's done some things that sort of break up her sentences. First thing, and you can either say it out loud or you can type in the chat. What is the exclamatory sentence in this passage? Which sentence uses an exclamation point? How sudden, yes, thank you, Charlotte. How sudden and complete is our immersion? And that's an interesting sentence because it's got that dash in it beforehand. What profound depths we visit then. How sudden and complete is our immersion? Why do you think she chose to make that part? How sudden and complete is our immersion? Why would she choose to put an exclamation point there when there isn't one anywhere else in the passage? Oh, good. Yeah, I've got in the chat there, it intensifies the second part. Thank you for the person who just said because. Yes. Yeah, there's a reason that you use exclamation points, and it's not like when you're using a ton of exclamation points in like text to your friends. Like my best friend uses a million exclamation points, and sooner or later it kind of like loses the emphasis, because if you're intensifying everything, then it all kind of falls flat. But she's chosen this one part to emphasize and try to intensify this feeling. How sudden and complete is our immersion? And then the second question, I think this is a little bit more complicated, but classifying each sentence short, medium, or long, and how is the meaning of the passage reinforced and clarified by sentence length? I'm not actually going to ask y'all that question because I think that is sort of complicated, but I just wanted to kind of point out this first sentence is pretty long. Not insanely long, but it's a pretty long sentence. And then we've got this shorter one with a dash in the middle. And then you've got, this one is really weird because it's got like a short clause and then a semicolon, another short clause, and then an ellipsis, and then another short sentence, and then a long sentence. So it's really varied as far as sentence length. And again, I feel like we don't think about our sentence length that often, particularly if you're not doing a ton of writing on your own, just like creative writing, if you're not thinking about it. But for instance, one thing that I know about myself is that when I write, I do tend to have really long sentences. And I think probably it's because that's sort of how I talk and how everybody talks, really. We don't normally have like short sentence, short sentence, short sentence. It's just like we kind of do like stream of consciousness when we talk, and I definitely do. And so I do tend to have like really long, complex sentences. And sometimes if I'm writing and I've noticed a lot of long, complicated sentences in a row, I kind of have to step back and think like, where can I shorten some of these? Where can I break them up into more sentences that are shorter? Not because there's anything wrong with writing a lot of long sentences, but because if you just have long sentence after long sentence after long sentence, it can get kind of monotonous. And same thing for short sentence, short sentence, short sentence. That can get kind of monotonous. In fact, Hemingway, for being one of the most famous and revered authors of the 20th century, he gets made fun of sometimes. And sometimes people don't like him because they think that his sentences are too short and simple. What's that, guys? Okay. So tomorrow we'll do a little bit more about with exclamatory sentences. But I just want y'all to go ahead and start thinking about syntax and why you're choosing to form a sentence the way you are. Again, it's not a thing that we put a whole lot of thought into, but professional writers do. They do think about these things, and we might not be professional writers, but we are writers. We have to be because that's our job. We're in school. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, and this is probably the only other thing we're going to do, because, and I just want to point this out, what day did we, this is not the right class. One sec. Your Crucible context keynotes were due the 9th, which I believe was Thursday or Friday. Not very many people turned them in despite having Wednesday and Thursday to work on them. What I was going to do is kind of compile the information from those and kind of do my own keynote made up of your keynotes to do some context before we start reading the Crucible, which will be this week. But without very many of you turning it in, doesn't seem to be much point in doing that. So I'm not going to, but instead we're going to go over some new vocabulary. And I haven't published it yet. So give me one sec and I'll do that. 9:13. So I'm going to make this an assignment, but it's not actually an assignment. You're not getting graded on it. I'm going to give you the new vocabulary list, and it should have, everybody should have their own copy. And we're going to go through the words and definitions together, and then there's a section where you're completing the sentences, and I'm going to give you all a few minutes to do that, and then we'll go over it together. So it's not a grade for the grade book, but you'll want to work on it so that everyone will have the right answers, because we'll have a quiz on it on Friday. Crucible vocabulary. Yes, that's correct. Navaya, I'll check on that after we do this. And also, I see that another couple people have joined us. I will go back and change attendance in just a couple minutes as well. I don't want to take a break to do that right now. So Crucible vocabulary, and I'll share my screen with y'all, but it is published now, just while we're going over the sentences. And you will notice in these sentences, or you probably will anyway, that some of these have a particular religious bent to them. And again, we're doing Puritan literature right now, and Puritan is a form of religion, like a sect of Christianity. So it makes sense that there's some pretty religious terms in here. Okay, so for the first one is persecute, which means to subject someone to hostility and ill treatment, especially because of their race or political or religious beliefs. You disagree with something fundamental about them, so you treat them poorly because of that. Number 2 is somber, which means dark or dull in color or tone, or oppressively solemn or sober in mood. Somber and sober are so close. And solemn. All these words are kind of synonyms, and they all mean the same thing. An ordinance is an authoritative order or decree. Predilection means a preference or special liking for something, or a bias in favor of something. And that could be like a bad habit that you have but like to do. Or it could just be like a food that you really like, or anything like that. Maraud is a verb that means to roam around in search of things to steal or people to attack. So whenever I hear the word maraud, I think of the Marauders map from Harry Potter that they made so that they could keep an eye on the castle at all times and be able to like sneak around and pull pranks and stuff. So that's a good way to remember the word maraud. Number 6 is conjure, like The Conjuring, to call upon a spirit or ghost to appear by means of a magic ritual, or to make something appear unexpectedly or seemingly from nowhere as if by magic. So it could be literally like conjuring up a spirit or something, or it could be like I conjured that out of thin air. Number 7 is abide, which means to bear patiently or tolerate. Number 8 is grapple, which means to struggle or wrestle. It could be physically, or in a more metaphorical sense, it could mean to begin to understand or deal with something in a direct way. Like you might be grappling with an idea, or you may be grappling with particular emotions, or you may be physically grappling with another person. Number 9 is apparition, which is a supernatural appearance of a thing or person, especially a ghost. If you see a ghost, then that's an apparition. Or if you thought you saw something, but you weren't sure, maybe it was an apparition. And then last, our word is fancy. But if you'll notice, it's a verb. It doesn't mean like, oh, you fancy. It means to have a particular liking or desire for. Like I'd really fancy a slice of pizza right now. So you've got these 10 sentences here. There's one sentence for each word, and I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes to work on these, and then we'll go over them together. Just want to go ahead and say, don't leave it all to one person to give us all the answers. Make sure that you've got some to contribute, and you can either say them out loud or you can type them in the chat. But I'll give you all a few minutes and then we'll go over them together. And in the meantime, I will fix attendance for today. Does anybody need more time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll give you another couple minutes. Okay, let's go through these together and we'll go through each one, make sure everybody has the right answers, and you'll want to keep these and study with them over the next few days. We'll go back over them before the quiz on Friday. We'll probably do a Kahoot or something on Thursday. But the sentences will probably be about the same. If there's one or two that wind up being confusing that I didn't realize, then I might change those. But mostly, yes. So the first one, Jemiah has requested to do the first one. A good citizen will blank by the rules. Jemiah, what is it?
Abide.
It is abide. Good. A good citizen will abide by the rules. Number 2, I love almost all desserts, but have a particular blank for anything chocolate. Who knows what that one is? You can type it in the chat or say it out loud. I have a particular blank for anything chocolate. Just I really particularly like
Fancy.
chocolate. What was it?
Fancy.
It's not fancy, but you know what? Now that you say that, it makes sense that you would mistake that. So I might change either this sentence or the one for fancy, because even though we're using fancy as a verb, you could say I have a particular fancy for anything chocolate. So I might change those. However, a couple people have it in the chat. Yes, it is predilection. I have particular predilection for anything chocolate. So again, I might change that sentence for the quiz, but we'll see. Number 3, in Europe, people were blanked for not being Christians. And particularly for not being Christians. That's, yep, persecuted. Couple, oh, a lot of y'all are getting it in the chat. Nice. Okay, number 4, if y'all haven't seen the movie Hereditary, I think it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. It's very good though. The mom in Hereditary, and I tried to avoid spoilers here, the mom in Hereditary thought she had blanked the spirit of a loved one, not realizing she had invited an evil force into her home. Yes, Dylan, Nate, conjured. Nice. Number 5, and this is a little bit of a spoiler for the book, but we did talk about this when we went over the characters the other day. Abigail wanted to destroy John Proctor's marriage because she blanked him herself. She wanted to wreck his marriage because she had feelings for him. So what would that be? She blanked him. Yes, fancied. She fancied him. We think of that as being more like a British term. Like if you guys watch any British television, you'll see them all the time being like, oh, I really fancy him. I fancy her. But considering we came over here from England, that makes a lot of sense. Number 6, the police established an blank that said everyone needed to be indoors by 9 p.m. Ordinance. Yes, Dylan's on it today. Number 7, I suppose this would be a bit of a spoiler for Hamlet, which we'll read next year. The guards in Hamlet saw an blank that looked like the king, even though he had been murdered a while ago. Apparition. Got it. Okay, number 8, the group of pirates traveled with the intent to blank other ships passing by. Think about what pirates do. It's not persecute. Pirates go around trying to steal treasure or booty from other people. Yeah, maraud. Got it, Nate. Okay, number 9, when gorillas want to show dominance, they tend to blank with each other. Grapple. Yes, good. And lastly, the song they played at his funeral sounded appropriately blank. Somber. Yes, good. Okay, perfect. Like I said, we'll go back over these probably Thursday. You have them there with you. Before we do anything else, does anybody need to hear any particular number again? Make sure you got all the right answers. Okay, good. Good. All right. Well, I think that's what we're gonna do today. We'll do new stuff tomorrow, but we've got like 12 minutes left of class, so I don't want to start something new. Unless anybody has anything for the good of the group, I'm gonna let you guys go. We're all good. All right, y'all have a good rest of your Monday. Bye.